My dad is marrying my ex-girlfriend. I was planning on texting my ex-girlfriend Steph. I did end up texting her, and like 5 minutes later, she called me. We talked for like half an hour, and she basically told me that she was just as surprised as I was, and that she had no idea my dad was also her boyfriend. She said she was still reeling and was planning on telling him soon, but didn't know how to do it. I already know that some of you are going to ask her how I believe this. To answer a few questions I saw in the post, my dad doesn't have social media except for LinkedIn, lol, and doesn't really have any pictures of me in his house. I also don't really use social media very much in an effort to keep the woman who gave birth to me out of my life. The only picture I've ever seen is one from my college graduation, and that one is just in his office. A lot of people also assume that Steph and I went to the same college. I did meet her while I was in college, but we did not go to school together. I honestly just assumed my dad didn't really talk about me all that much, especially since our relationship was still in the early stage of reconnecting. I will admit that the comments did sort of get to me, and they did make me kind of suspicious, but I decided to give her the benefit of the doubt. So at the end of the call with Steph, she told me that she was going to talk to him that night. I agreed, and stayed by my phone, but I never got a call from my dad, which I thought was weird. I called Steph in the morning and asked her if she'd talked to him. She said she had, and that he just needed some space right now. She said it would be best if I didn't talk to him about it. I thought that was really weird, so I decided to text my dad anyway. I asked him if Steph had talked to him and he said that they had. I asked him if he wanted to talk about it, and he said he would prefer not to, and that he thought it would be best if we just took a step back from our relationship. He said that he was really dealing with a lot, and this was all extremely hard for him. I have to say, I was pretty heartbroken when he said that, and it really got me thinking. A lot of you asked me if I'd be okay with my dad marrying Steph, and honestly, I really wouldn't be. I don't really like the idea of him dating anyone just because of how easily he's manipulated. I knew he had been in a relationship, but I'd always told him that I didn't really want to hear about it, and that all that mattered was that he was happy. So we never really talked about his romantic life. However, I realized that even if I wasn't happy about it, and even if I seriously hated it, I wouldn't want to risk losing my dad over it. He mattered way more to me. So, I decided I'd give him a day, and then went over to his place on Sunday. He looked pretty uncomfortable when he saw me, but I wasn't taking no for an answer, so he let me in. We sat in silence for a few moments, before I basically just told him that we needed to talk about this. He was pretty quiet and he was pretty much sitting as far as he could from me. So I told him that I really didn't want my previous relationship with Steph to change my relationship with him, and that I was okay with him getting married. He looked kind of confused and what being friends with Steph had to do with any of it. It was my turn to be confused, so I asked him if Steph talked to him again. He said she had, and he didn't really know how to deal with the information. It really seemed like he was tiptoeing around the subject and he wouldn't even look me in the eyes, so I finally just asked him what Steph said. She told him I was in love with him. That's right. This crazy manipulative, word I can't use here apparently, really told him that I had admitted my intimate attraction for him years ago. Apparently, her story was that we were friends, not girlfriends, just friends, when I was in college, and that we'd gotten really close, and I'd told her my secret. I was pretty appalled to learn that she said that, but I had told her about how the woman who gave birth to me had claimed that my dad and I had an illicit and inappropriate relationship to get the protective order. She knew that would be a sensitive topic for my dad, and apparently she encouraged him to take some space away from me. At that point, I was enraged. I couldn't believe she would really do something like that. After that, I told him the truth. I told him about how Steph and I had dated years ago, and how I was pretty sure she made all of that up so I wouldn't tell him. He believed me pretty quickly, especially when I showed him a picture of the present she gave me for our first anniversary. My dad didn't really say anything besides just apologizing to me over and over again and telling me how sorry he was for believing her. I told him it was okay and we just hugged it out. After that, he called up Steph and asked her to come over. I've honestly never seen him like that. He's normally such a happy guy, but the look on his face was terrifying. Steph did end up coming, and it looked like she knew what was going to happen because she was just staring at the floor. I won't lie, when I saw her, I really wanted to just rip her hair out of her head, but sitting beside my dad really helped me keep calm. My dad told her that he knew the truth. Steph apologized over and over again to both of us. Apparently, she had no idea that I was his daughter at the beginning of the relationship, and she didn't make the connection until they had been dating for over a year and had started discussing marriage. She said that she felt like it was too late at that point and that she felt like she couldn't lose him. That was apparently why she pushed back on the idea of meeting me, and why she really didn't want to have that dinner with me either, although she told him that it was because of the age gap and that she was afraid of me judging her. Apparently, she was the one who convinced him that I'd be really against the relationship because of the age gap. She said that she told him the story about us being friends and me admitting my fantasies about my dad to her because she hoped that it would keep the two of us apart. When I asked her if she was really going to ruin my relationship with my dad over a lie like that forever, she said that she was going to tell the truth once they were married, since she was sure he wouldn't want to go through a divorce again. Apparently she would never dream of separating us again. What a load of bullshit that was. Steph was crying pretty much the whole time, and getting all of the information out of her was like pulling teeth, but eventually we learned the truth, or at least as much of it as we could. She begged him not to end their relationship, but my dad was pretty much just done with at that point. That's when she really started going hysterical and I swear she had a full mental breakdown. She kept screaming at me how I ruined her life, and I was honestly scared she was going to hurt me or my dad. Luckily she didn't, and she did calm down after a while, although she was still curled up on the floor. I felt pretty bad for her seeing her like that, but then I remembered what she tried to do and I just got angry all over again. I'm guessing some of my dad's neighbors called the police because they knocked at the door asking about a domestic disturbance. My dad is really scared of the police because of how the woman who gave birth to me had weaponized them against him in the past, so I ended up going to talk to them. Steph tried to grab me as I walked to the door, but she couldn't even get herself off of the floor. I told the police that she was refusing to leave, and eventually they were able to escort her out. My dad and I were pretty shaken up about that, but we decided to try getting some takeout and watching one of our favorite movies together. We were pretty much hugged together the entire time and we fell asleep on the couch together. It really felt so good. I was just so happy. So that's that. Steph is officially out of my dad's life, and I have convinced him to change the lock so she doesn't try to get in here again. I've also tried convincing him to try to get a protective order against her, but he isn't willing to do that just yet. He's convinced that he's not going to be able to get one, so it would be a waste of time, but the woman who gave birth to me had done it pretty easily, so I figured there was a good chance anyway, especially with the police report I'm guessing the officers had to file. In the meantime, I'm going to stay with him, at least until he gets the locks changed. I told him I'd like to move in here with him once my lease ends in March, and he told me he'd think about it. Right now, I just want to be around my dad. I told my daughter that I won't attend her wedding if her biological father is there, but now she says that I'm being stuck in the past. Part 2. Before I get started on the update, I have a few things I want to address. A lot of people have questioned me on why I did not tell my daughter that she was a product of assault. The only answer is that I was ashamed of myself. For some context, before I got married to my husband, I actually was very close friends with my attacker. We grew up together in a small community and our families were close. Our parents even wanted us to get together. He was always interested in me, but I didn't give him a chance until university. I broke it off with him and started dating my husband, but I never cut him off because we were very close. He invited me over to drink. This was normal for us. And when I started getting a bit tipsy, he assaulted me. I was very traumatized by the situation and tried to get him jailed, but I couldn't. He had a very good reputation, so everyone believed him. Even my own mother. When he said I willingly came over and did it with him. I eventually stopped pursuing because of the social pressure, which only got worse when I found out I was pregnant. I eventually left that place with my husband and kids to live somewhere else. After I gave birth, my husband suggested therapy, but I was scared of being judged again, so I decided to bury it and try to forget about it. I just realized now that it was the worst way to go about this, but it's the only way I knew how to honestly. After reading all the advice I'd gotten, I decided that I should stop running away and tell her everything. I called her to come over and she did. I first apologized for yelling at her for her suggestion because in her mind, it was an innocent suggestion. I told her that I wasn't angry at her, but how fast she was willing to replace her father because he was in a wheelchair, and that anger was compounded because she brought up her genetic father. I apologized again for acting childish and not like an adult. She asked me why I am so against her genetic father being in the same vicinity as I am, and I just told her everything from our initial friendship to her forced conception. She didn't believe me, like some Redditors predicted, but I can get a copy of the records of the court case and offered them to her if she needed a look. She looked stunned, like she wanted to believe me but couldn't. I apologized for keeping all this from her because I didn't know how to bring it up. She told me she didn't believe me and would confirm with her genetic father, so I told her to take the time she needed to process all this. Later that day, she came again, crying and apologizing for not believing me. I held her and cried and apologized too. It was kind of therapeutic. We had a long chat and I did feel closer to her. When we were done, she said she wanted to take me out to a surprise to help me feel better in a couple of days, which I happily agreed to. I went to see her yesterday in this little restaurant with a patio that had a private pay-for-use area for a maximum of 4 people, due to COVID. As she ran up to me and gave me a hug, she led me to the patio, where her biological father stood. She told me he was here to apologize and start my healing journey. I just wanted to leave, but he grabbed my hand and all those memories I tried to repress just came back out. I started having a panic attack and lost balance, to which he tried to help me keep my balance, which worsened everything. I honestly don't remember how I left, but I ended up in my car just sobbing. I called my elder son to pick me up because I was not fit to drive at that moment. Today, my daughter called me upset that I ruined her surprise, but I was extremely upset with her. I asked her why she did that when she knows everything that happened between me and him, and she tried to use the excuse of my healing journey, but I wasn't having it. She admitted that she wanted me to get used to him because he's going to be walking her down the aisle along with my husband and doing the daddy-daughter dance. I told her that while I loved her and respect her decision to be with him, I am not willing to be anywhere he is. She started complaining about how she wants all her family to be there, and I'm still not forgiving, but I hung up the phone. My husband is aware of everything and stands by me of not going to her wedding, but I don't want this. If my other children were to know, they would stand by me and tell the rest of their extended family, which is going to lead to my daughter getting disowned by the family. There is no need to give me advice on this because I will be seeking professional aid. What is your darkest, deepest and naughtiest secret? In my teen years when I was dating my husband, I used to meet him at lunch a few days a week. I would always go through the perfume section of David Jones to spray myself with my favorite perfume before meeting him. I don't know why I didn't just buy some of my own as I was working at the time. I used to wear a black skirt and a white blouse to work, very much like the uniform of the girls and DJs, and sometimes sauntered around the perfume section as if I worked there. For some reason I thought it was a glamorous job working in the David Jones perfume department. One day a man asked me for some help with perfume, and instead of saying I didn't work there, I helped him out. He smelled a couple of sample cards and then said he would take a bottle of some expensive brand that I can't remember now. But it was locked behind a glass sliding door because it was quite expensive. So instead of fessing up, I walked to the counter of the perfume section and took the keys out of the top drawer as I had seen the girls there do 1,000 times. I then walked over to the register and realized I had no idea what I was doing. Another girl came up, an older lady, and asked what I was doing. I explained to her that this gentleman wished to purchase the perfume for his wife but that I hadn't received my register code yet due to being new there. I turned to the man and explained Sandra would ring up his sale and wished him a lovely day and turned to leave the store. As I reached the top of the escalator I was met by 2 security guards who asked me to go with them to the security office and I felt that horrible feeling. I went hot from my head all the way down to my toes and my heart sank and skipped a beat. Sandra walked in and crossed her arms and just looked at me for a few moments. I could only blurt out the word sorry and nearly started to cry. Sandra asked me sternly if I had a resume and if I was interested in working there. She knew I was an office junior from the copy company up the street and said I would be better suited to retail since the customer had explained how helpful I was and asked her to pass on his appreciation for my assistance. 2 days later I handed in my resignation and started my new job at David Jones, and it actually paid $3 more per hour than my current job. I worked there for 10 years in various departments including perfume, white goods, audio-visual and ladies' wear. I was well paid, well trained, had 4 weeks paid holidays per year and was also able to study part-time. Nobody else in the company knew how I got my job and Sandra moved on to a different store 2 months after she employed me. I was so proud in those first few days when I got my register key, swipe card and official David Jones name badge. It wasn't all as glamorous as I had imagined it would be, but for a long time here in Australia David Jones held a very prestigious position in retail. Christmas was always wonderful with everything being decorated and so much excitement about the DJ's Christmas window display. Unfortunately it's not the company it once was and online shopping has cheapened all major outlets in their fight to remain competitive. But I have fond memories of working there and of sauntering round the perfume section for a quick spritz before meeting my boyfriend for lunch.